Right then, today we are going to talk about the silent revolution, or the silent inner peace revolution, silent revolution for short. So, this is the last lesson in the set of self-healing lessons that we teach as part of the pyramid course. And the pyramid course runs on Saturday mornings, once a month. In case any of you know anyone who would like to join the pyramid course, it's for the general public. It's for the purpose of teaching self-healing, for the purpose of teaching the basics of self-healing, the basics of health and well-being maintenance, you could say, the things that we think people should be doing every day, all the time, as part of their routine. And that is 7 lessons long, and now we've done 6 of them, and this is the 7th one. And it's called the Silent Revolution. What happens to self-healing on a collective level, or what is the potential of self-healing? What can self-healing do for the world, for the planet? So as you go through this lesson, try and think of it in terms, just to give you a heads up on the assignment for this lesson, because the assignment for this lesson is all about coming up with some ideas, with some ideas from you guys about how the silent inner peace revolution can actually happen in practice. So as you're going through this lesson, if you get any little ideas spring to mind, jot them down. It will help you with the assignment, because I'm going to ask for everyone to come up with a little bit of a short piece of writing, just expressing yourself and the ideas of the silent revolution and ideas of how you think that it can be beneficial to the planet and how it can actually happen, how the silent revolution can happen. So let's get going. Right, hopefully you can see that. So it is actually lesson 9 of the fast track, the silent revolution. So let's start with a little definition of the silent inner peace revolution, a transformation of our world through healing. So we're going to define it like this. And don't worry, this is all in the course notes. A silent healing revolution of the collective inner human, spiritual and psychological condition, causing a change in values and behaviour that spreads from person to person like a chain reaction until it becomes a global collective movement, changing the very fabric of our societies. So in a nutshell, that's what we mean by the silent revolution. And this lesson is all about how that can actually happen in practice. So it's a change or a revolution in the inner spiritual psychological condition. Now, the main purpose of this lesson, to be honest with you, think about, I should also say actually quickly here, this is part of the course that we're teaching to the general public. Quite a big chunk of it at the end of this lesson is not actually part of that course. Because there's the silent revolution lesson and there's extra stuff just because this is part of the fast track. So I will let you know when the public one stops, and then we go on to a little bit extra for the fast track. But the main message of this lesson that we give as part of the pyramid course is hope. That is what we want to give or spread or give people some hope. Because there's a lot of depression and anxiety about the future of the planet at the moment. So the silent revolution is all about hope. Now, I'm making a point of this. It's all about hope because I'm about to point out some negatives. I'm going to start pointing out what's actually wrong in the world to start with, because we've got to go from a starting. So the world has a disease, let's say. Now, we like to think of things in terms of healing, of course. So using the analogy of healing, you could say that the world has a disease currently, or arguably. But let's look at the symptoms of the disease, because to cure a disease, we have to actually look at the symptoms. What is causing this disease? So I'm going to rush over some of these things. I'm not really trying to spark a discussion about this. I just want to list a few things that people may write on their list when they're writing lists about what is wrong in the world. So here's some examples. Governance, there's problems with governance, isn't there? Political polarization or growing polarization. There's failures in leadership. There's growing levels of conflict and war. Democracy is in trouble, you could say. Some people would say that. The rise of isolationism, a resurgence of autocracies, human rights abuses, and failure of the United Nations. The United Nations is becoming completely helpless to stop anything, the troubles that are going on in the world. There's social issues that seem to be growing. There's a crisis of truth. Rise of conspiracy theories, gender conflicts, religious conflicts. Now, these are all part of sort of identity politics or identity conflicts. Social polarization. Seems like in all aspects of life, it seems that our social structure is being polarized into two in many areas, which is causing conflict. There's epidemics of fear and anger and hatred and rising crime, and social media, of course, amplifies all that. Social media is not inherently good or bad, is it? It just amplifies everything. Social media can be very positive, but it can also be very, very negative. And there are systemic issues going on as well, like dwindling resources, housing crisis, which is all over the world. It's not just in this country that we have a housing crisis. Healthcare crisis. The economic wealth gap is getting worse, not better. National debts are growing. Corruption is rife. There's prison crisis. And schools are in trouble. These are systemic type of issues. And of course, the big one, some people may call the big one, the collapse of nature, the environmental crisis. So that was a load of problems I needed to point out just so that we know what needs to be fixed on the planet. Sue. Morning, Sue. Yeah, no worries. Yep, good, thank you. You've actually done this. You've done most of this lesson already, actually, because it's the silent revolution. And but there is a chunk on the end of this lesson which you haven't done because it's extra to the pyramid course. And I should mention again, just for your benefit there, that the assignment for this particular lesson, the silent revolution, is going to be a piece of writing where I'm going to ask you to come up with your own ideas about how the silent revolution can actually happen. So it's a bit of creative writing, using your own experiences, your own interpretations, and parts of this lesson, and give us your own ideas through your own experiences, through your own eyes, of how the silent inner peace revolution can actually happen. All right, then. So just back to the collapse of nature. That's where we're at. So we've talked about the horrible things that are going on in the planet, and we don't need to dwell on that because this is not a negative lesson at all. Like I said before, we want to spread a message of hope through this lesson. So what is the cure for the disease? If all that was the symptoms of the disease, what is the cure for the disease? Do we need to change our leaders? Is it all about diplomacy or ethical capitalism or climate action to change the environmental crisis, or more housing or more law enforcement or peacekeeping? Is that what the cure actually is? More of this, more of that? People have been doing that for a long time, haven't they? So we would say that no, that is not the cure. That is treating the symptoms of the disease. So what is the actual cause of the disease? Well, you could say that these things are the cause of the disease, perhaps. Greed, incompetence, selfishness, deceit, anger, arrogance, enjoyment of power, cruelty, tribalism, or fear and hatred. All these type of things, these are part of the human psyche, of course. You could say that these are part of the problem, let's say the cause of the disease. But where are these things coming from? Well, of course, these things are coming from the false self, the mask, the human identity, which we talked about in the psychological layer extensively. The psychological self, or the human ego, that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? Sometimes called the little self. This is where all of these characteristics are coming from, the human ego. But of course, this is a false identity, as we talked about in the spiritual layer. and the psychological layer. It's all a false identity, because the true self is pure and peaceful awareness, the top of the pyramid. So everything, all the personality characteristics of the human ego is all a false identity. So what is the cure for the disease? Well, perhaps you could say that the cure of the disease are these kind of things: patience, tolerance, openness, a sense of community, happiness, compassion, inner peace, nurture, unconditional love. All these things are part of the cure, aren't they? Maybe you could say these are symptoms of the cure. But how do you get to these? Well, in short, you could say that you are the cure. So what I'm talking about here is you, individually, you are the cure. But we're talking to everybody there, aren't we? Every individual on the planet is the cure to the disease, because we're talking about self-healing, of course. That's the whole point of the pyramid course, the potential of self-healing on a collective level. But it has to start on an individual level, because self-healing is a type of transformation. Going on a self-healing journey is a type of transformation, which is why the blue butterfly is a symbol of transformation. That's our logo at AM. So as you go on a journey of self-healing, silent inner peace gradually grows. And eventually we realize that peace that we are feeling is coming from our own awareness. But at the same time, we're working on all the layers of the pyramid to change the personality, to remove the negative parts of our personality and to increase the positive parts of our personality. So the silent inner peace is the spiritual layer. And we work on all the layers at once to change the personality. And of course, it does take time. We're not saying this can happen at once. That silent inner peace that grows very gradually takes a long time. And we're talking about side 3 here, aren't we? Side 3 of the pyramid, the results. If we find peace and unity in the spiritual layer, that has a knock-on effect to the psychological layer. It starts smoothing it all out. We find healthy values. We're also working on the psychological layer at the same time. Then that has a massive impact on the emotional layer. We find positive karma emotions rather than negative karma emotions. And we're working on the emotional layer at the same time with things like emotional meditation and other things. And then that has a massive impact on the bioenergy layer. We find balanced emotion chakras. So we find emotional stability. And we're doing breath work at the same time on the bioenergy layer. And then that has a massive impact on the health of the material body. So the effects of this is that all of those negative parts of our personality very slowly get filtered out. And we find more and more of the positive parts. Now let's be clear here, this is spiritual evolution that we're talking about. You know, a self-healing journey runs over many, many incarnations in reality. But that's really what we're doing with a self-healing journey. It's a spiritual evolution or spiritual development. So the silent inner peace of our own awareness is part of the silent revolution, of course. And that's why we're called Aya, Awaken Your Awareness, the spiritual layer. So this phrase, you are the cure, has 2 meanings, in fact. Because first of all, it's saying to people, you individually are the cure for the disease, go through a self-healing journey, but then also you, the true self, is the cure. The real true self is also the cure for the disease. The silent inner peace of our own awareness. Okay, any questions so far? So we've talked about what self-healing can do on an individual basis. That's what the whole of the pyramid course is all about. Well, let's say 6 lessons of the pyramid course is all about individual self-healing. But what can happen on a collective level? Well, we go from a world in pain to a golden world. Or we're calling it a golden world. That's our concept, the golden world. But of course, it's been talked about for millennia. You could also call it a healed world. What it has been called many times before in the past, a new earth. And that's a bit of a famous term, that. So what happens to nature as the world changes? How does nature get fixed? Is that part of the cure? Well, if you think about it, most people would agree that the environmental crisis and the collapse of nature is caused by humans. So if you fix what's going on with humans, well, nature heals naturally, doesn't it? Nature actually bounces back very quickly, quite often. So if you fix the problem that's causing the problems with nature, then nature will heal by itself, which is why the cure is always back to the human ego, fixing the human ego, fixing the human condition. Now, some people may accuse us of being unrealistic or being idealists. If you look out into the world to see what's going on right now, it's very easy to say all these ideas are complete rubbish, complete nonsense. Who's going to listen? Who's going to go on a self-healing journey? Look what's happening in the world. And that's a fair point. However, that's looking in the short term, really. It takes time to change. And what we're talking about here is changing culture, isn't it? It's changing the culture of the planet, the culture of the world, the global culture. And that always takes time. To do it peacefully anyway, it takes time. So we're not saying that it's all going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long, long time. But that is what has to happen. And also we need to try and encourage people to get away from this idea of quick fixes. The magic pill. Everyone wants to heal quickly. Everyone wants to take a pill and be fixed. And it's the same whether we're talking about individual healing or societal healing or global healing. Everyone wants immediate results, when immediate results don't really happen, because that's not how evolution works. It's not how spiritual evolution works. So we have to try and encourage people to go for long-term stable growth. Work hard and then see the results come in over time. Questions? So here's one question. How do we know it will be a good future? Because when we present this lesson, quite often that is the question. How do you know that this is going to happen? Or is it going to happen? Because you might think, or people might think, that the opposite will happen. How do you know which way it's going to go? And if you think the opposite is going to happen, well, that's quite a depressing thought, isn't it? And that's what's going on in the world at the moment. People are quite depressed about the trajectory of the planet, or at least anxious about the trajectory of the planet. But we're trying to spread a message of hope with this. We're saying that there is a reason to have hope. Now I'm going to take you on a little journey of infinite determinism. Now, it's a concept that has existed in many spiritual philosophies before, so it's not just us saying it now, especially Eastern philosophies. But it is a reason to have hope. And it's infinite determinism. And it's how the universe works. The universe is infinitely deterministic. So if it's the first time you've heard of this type of thing, all I ask is just to look at it with an open mind and see what you think. But the idea of infinite determinism is that the universe is predetermined. It's infinitely predetermined. Or you could say, it is set in stone. What happens is set in stone. Now there is a lot of, this is a big discussion point in mainstream at the moment. The battle between determinism and free will, for example. I'm not going to necessarily go into the whole discussion or the debate about it. I'm just going to describe the concept of infinite determinism. So I'm going to use a couple of analogies to start with. So imagine the universe as a movie. It's a movie that's playing, and this little square here is what you can see in the movie. So the universe is a movie that you're watching on a screen, and everything you see around you through your eyes is this movie screen. Every movie has a roll of film. I'm going old school here in terms of one of those old projections with a big reel of film. Think of it like that. So this little strip that you can see here is a reel of film, and it's producing what you can see on the screen. So as that reel of film moves through the projector, it projects the image on the screen. And it changes, of course. The universe is in a constant state of change and flux. Nothing stays still, does it? But this strip of information, you could call it, carries on flowing and projecting or manifesting. So the film strip is like a strip of information, and it is projecting or manifesting the physical universe of form. Everything that you see around you is being manifested from this information. That includes all of the galaxies and planets in the universe. It includes all of life in the universe. That includes humanity, cities, and people themselves, of course. It includes everything around us. So now I'm going to go to another analogy, because this information that we're talking about, which manifests everything, where does it come from? And this is where we come to the concept of the source of the universe. Now, this isn't just a spiritual concept anymore, because even part of physics now, in mainstream science, is starting to talk about what produces space and time and everything around us. And they call it the emergent universe. So this is a theoretical concept in physics already, the emergent universe. The idea that the universe emerges from something else, they don't know what it is, no idea, but they're saying time and space are not fundamental. They're coming from something, emerging from something. So in this analogy, what we're saying is the sun is the source. The sun is the source of energy. The source of the universe is the source of the universe, of all energy in the universe. And let's not forget that everything in the universe is actually made of energy. So then let's carry on with the analogy. And now we can say that the rays of sun coming from the source are like the film strips, the strips of information. And now we can give it a name, Akashic information. Akasha, the information which generates or manifests the whole of the physical reality around us. Now, the word Akasha is an ancient word. It's a Sanskrit word, in fact, originally. So these concepts have been ingrained in our spiritual philosophies for a long, long, long time. So what is the source? Well, what we're saying here is the source is awareness itself. The source is consciousness itself. And now we're about to talk about the idea of non-duality, because here you've got the source on the left, universal awareness, you could say. And then you've got a person on the right, which is a small piece of individual awareness. Non-duality is the idea that there is no separation, ultimately. There is no separation between forms. There is no separation of awareness. So the universal awareness is the same as your awareness. It is one awareness. There is only one awareness. This is the concept of non-duality. Duality, by the way, means separation into two, dual. Non-duality is an ancient concept, and it forms the basis of many different spiritual philosophies, many of them originating from the Eastern religions. So there is one awareness, and realizing that fact is self-realization, which is what we've been talking about throughout the course, and is why we are called Awaken Your Awareness. So you could call that a bit of an awakening, that realization that there is one awareness and our awareness is the universal awareness. But how does that look in terms of globally? Well, you can see it happening sporadically throughout the planet already. Little pockets of awakening, you could call it, happening everywhere. And very slowly over time, it grows, because it spreads a bit like a chain reaction. And it's also got to do with soul families, and the level of development of people have got to a certain point where it's spreading much faster now. But it grows slowly over time. Those pockets of awareness grow larger and larger until eventually there's a tipping point. Eventually there's a tipping point where enough people on the planet have woken up to this fact, and it starts to snowball massively. Then it starts to get really quick, and the planet can actually heal from that point onwards. And that point onwards is what we call a global awakening. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, the global awakening, that's what we think is going to be happening soon. But how do we know it's going to happen? That's the next question. Yeah. No, okay, so that's a good question. I would say, first of all, I'd say that these thoughts have been in people's intuition for thousands of years, and they form part of many different cultures and many different religions and spiritual traditions. So these ideas of a global awakening are ingrained in our culture. And yes, through the age of suffering, I would say that everyone has been saying, every now and then, everyone has been wanting it to happen so much that they're saying it's about to happen, it's about to happen. And I think that's what you're getting at there, isn't it? Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And also, we should relate it um, to planetary cycles as well, because one very one very good example is the in Hindu cosmology is the yugas, the planetary ages or planetary cycles. And this is another way of telling when it's going to happen. And there's been predictions about when it's going to happen for a long time. But we're um, we're actually just moving right now from the age of suffering to the golden age, which is in yugas, in Hindu cosmology, it's moving from the age of suffering into Satya Yuga, it's called. It's the golden age of self-realization. And this is where we think we are, and this is where a lot of people think we are at the moment, just transitioning from one to the other. But in terms of the global awakening, no one can really know how long that will take or when exactly you call the global awakening, because it doesn't seem to really happen like that. There aren't these points where you can say, oh, that's happened or that is happening right now. So yeah, it's a bit difficult to know exactly the time frame, really. You know, it could take thousands of years, the global awakening, you know. Yeah, no, I think I know what you're saying there. It's the idea that past, present, and future all exist at the same moment because time doesn't exist and it's all happening in the present moment, right? I think, is that what you're referring to? Yeah, yeah, no, so it's a popular belief or theory that it's all happening at the same time, and I think it's kind of I think that's called the block universe theory, where it's all it's not actually happening. It's not time's not actually moving. It's just a blocked universe, and you travel through it. You could say, and it's kind of outside of time. I mean, personally, I think that there is some truth to that, but then some misconceptions about it, because I think that it's more about acacia flow and acacia. What we've the analogy that we just used in terms of the movie screen and the a flow of acacia, which is manifesting the movie screen. So I would say that acacia is infinite. It's produced infinitely. And then as it manifests into the present moment, and then after the present moment, it recedes infinitely. So it never really goes away, but it's not that I don't think that the past and the future uh, exist at the same time as the present. It's just the information still exists non-physically. I think we're getting a bit deep into it there, aren't we? We talk about that more in another lesson as well, called "What is Awareness," and we talk about that some more, and also another lesson called the Universal Trinity. Yeah, yeah, that's a whole other world to open up or to open the door to. But yeah, the certain events in the history of the planet are tied to these planetary cycles. And once you start to get an idea of where you've been in the past and get an idea of the journey of humanity, start to notice these akashic cycles. You know, the information that generates the universe actually flows in cycles, and you start to become aware of these cycles. You start to become aware of the planetary cycles, which is another reason why it is possible to know that the global awakening is going to happen, and it's going to happen fairly soon. I say soon, that's a bit, how long is a piece of string? But in planetary cycles, it's going to happen very soon. Now let's go back to this, because this has brought us back to the question of how do we know it's going to happen? So, you know, we're not going to answer this in time frames, of course, because we can't know in terms of exact time frames. But there are a few things that we can know, and there are a few things that we can put into writing in a logical thought process, basically. Because this is a common question. Well, how do we know it's going to happen? How does anyone know? And by the way, these aren't just our theories. These are global theories, and have been global theories for thousands of years. Well, we can start with the idea that suffering drives healing, doesn't it? That's a pretty obvious thing to say. The next one we could say is we awaken from our suffering. Because self-realization or awakening is actually the highest form of healing. And we talked about that in lesson 2. But we awaken from our suffering. Suffering causes awakening. We know that on an individual level. We can tell that because we go through it on an individual level. And that is also a very popular or very well-known kind of phrase. We awaken from our suffering. Now, we do that individually, don't we? Of course, we awaken from our suffering individually. But if we do it individually, then we also do it collectively, because a collective is just a group of individuals. So we can also say that will happen globally. So then it follows that a global awakening will follow a period of global suffering. And this mirrors a lot of the planetary cycles stuff that is been in ancient cultures, like the Yugas, for example. So a global awakening must follow a global suffering. So you could then say that the universe is predetermined to awaken from its suffering. Now, that's if you take into account, or if you accept the idea of infinite determinism. Putting infinite determinism with awakening from suffering, we can logically say that the universe is predetermined to awaken from its suffering. Which means that if we go back to the movie projector, the global awakening is set in stone. The global awakening will happen. That's what we're saying here. It's already written in Akashic information. And that's why the message of hope is so important for this lesson. Whether people believe it or not, or if they do accept it to some degree, or accept it with an open mind, then there is hope, of course. And we also hope to remove fear as well, because if you know something's going to happen, then fear reduces. If you know that the global awakening is coming, fear definitely starts to reduce. Okay, and that's it for the theory today. Time for a discussion, I think. Yeah, that's a cracking question, and I think that there is a lot of confusion out there about that, exactly, because I think there's a lot of confusion about the yugas and other planetary cycles like that, because when you look at the yugas, it's easy to, or the planetary cycles, it's easy to assume that it starts again, because there's so many planetary cycles, and then it looks like it starts again. But I think the reality is very different to that. And I think that Akashic cycles do continue like that again and again and again. But they don't necessarily continue on this planet. So I think that all planets are connected in Akashic cycles. So these big planetary cycles will carry on going. And our period of life on this planet might be a section in one particular cycle or a group of cycles, but then life evolves, it flourishes, it becomes awake, and then it goes away again. But it's happening all over the universe. So you could say that these cycles are going around, and our particular cycle of life on this planet is happening right now. Let's say like that. But then eventually the life on this planet will end. This planet will end. Eventually the sun will engulf the planet. You know, that's a fairly accepted thing. But the planetary cycles continue in the universe, and another planet carries on the life cycle in the next load of cycles, if you see what I mean. So it's all in an interconnected web of planetary cycles and life, because life itself evolves along those planetary cycles. But you could say that although that the planetary cycles are cyclical, you could say that the journey of life is linear, because it happens for a certain period of time and then it goes away. You know, I hope that made some sense. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the movie screen analogy is just a way of trying to think of the universe and the information which manifests the universe. In terms of the end of the movie, well, you could say that it's infinite. So the flow of acacia is infinite. But, you know, the universe will have an end at some point. So there are ends within it. You know, this planet flourishes and then will die away, and all planets will. So there is an end. The life cycle of a soul, for example, evolves, goes through spiritual evolution, becomes self-realized, exists for quite a long time, and then at some point it will become absorbed back into the source. So even the life cycle of a soul will end. Let me not confuse you with the true self, by the way, because the true self is infinite and doesn't end. The soul is just a vehicle for awareness. But in terms of the end of the universe, this universe will have an end to it. It's because everything moves in cycles. So there is great universal cycles, is what we call it. And in fact, in ancient Vedic philosophies or traditions, it's called the breath of Brahman. Brahman is a word which kind of means God, but it's not quite the same as the word God. But it's the breath of Brahman, the in and out breathing cycle of Brahman, which is the great universal cycles. And the great universal cycles are a whole cycle of the universe from start to finish. From a singularity, let's say, from nothing, expansion into galaxies and life evolving in galaxies, all the way through all those different life forms in that universe becoming self-aware, a journey of self-awareness, and then going through self-realization, becoming avatars, and then eventually the receding of that universe, the dissipation of all that, the energy in that universe, and then the final absorption of all of the energy in the universe back into the source. But then a new universe being born, being created constantly, again and again and again. So infinite cycles, infinite great universal cycles is what picture. Yeah. Well, I mean, by the way, I've also gone to Brian Cox's road shows. Do you mean the big one with all the huge rock star screens going on and all that? Yeah, no. Yeah, definitely. It's great though, isn't it? And it really brings a new edge. Yeah. No, I like him a lot. I think, I like the way he teaches, and he brings it, brings physics, and makes it interesting. And so yeah, I think and I think he's definitely on the right journey. And I think when the intuition tap switch is on, then it becomes a different matter, because a lot of the thing is about science is that it's one way of agreeing on what is real in the world, and it's one way of finding knowledge, on finding evidence for things. But actually, it's not the best way. It's not the only way or the best way of finding knowledge. Inner knowledge is always the best way. But you can't. People. It's not a. it's not something that everyone can agree on, of course, which is why science is very important. You do have to have science there so that people can agree on the same thing. But yeah, 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 yeah. Hopefully, yeah. And just going back to another point you mentioned there about understanding and difficulty in understanding. And the thing is, you can't. There are some aspects to these conversations that the mind cannot understand because it's not designed to understand infinity. It's not the mind is not designed to understand infinite concepts, and it's not designed to understand the concept of no time, because the mind is a product of causality, it's a product of time, it's a product of the evolution of the universe, which is all made of energy, and energy itself is subjected to causality, or the flow, or the flow of acacia. And so the mind is not designed to. So it's perfectly normal to try and wrap your head around some of these concepts, and you just kind of fail. But the way to get around that is that you're not designed to think about it. You're designed to experience it. So what you can do is experience it. It's the only way to experience the absolute or the infinite or the source is through experience, not through thinking about it. So we have to try and think about it, and it's fun, and to even talk about it with each other, we have to try and think about it. But we also have to accept that there is a brick wall. At some point, you get to a brick wall, and you're like, well, I can't quite wrap my mind around it. But that's just trying to think about it. So it's all about actually experiencing the infinite. And when you start to experience it, when you allow yourself to actually experience the infinite, then everything changes, and then there's no more belief. It's not belief anymore. It's knowing. You know because you experience it. Yeah, great. That's very interesting. A lot going on there at CERN, isn't there? Although, I mean, my personal opinion is that I think they're kind of looking a little bit in the wrong place, if you know what I mean. Because they build these big particle accelerators. By the way, for anyone who doesn't know what CERN is, it's a place in Switzerland, I think, which is a big particle accelerator. It's like 10 miles wide, a big circle. It's a big circle, and they fire subatomic particles through. They accelerate these particles to almost the speed of light, and they do it with really powerful magnets. And they accelerate these particles, atoms and things like that, protons and other subatomic particles. They get them going really, really, really fast, and they've got two going the opposite directions around this. And then they collide them. And they collide these particles, and these protons start smashing against each other. And basically what they're doing is they're trying to detect new particles. And as these particles smash together, they break into smaller pieces, and then they've got detectors and stuff where they can actually detect what other smaller particles are coming away. So they've made some very major discoveries through doing this. But I kind of feel like they're not going to find the real answers by doing this. Smashing things together, I don't think is the right way. They're going to find, like, for example, they're not going to find the bioenergy layer of the body through this method, for example. In what way do you mean? Yeah, okay, yeah, right, yeah. We are quantum machines, you could say. Yeah, absolutely. But they're not going to find. I don't think they're going to find the evidence for the soul, for example, through this sort of thing, because the magnetic fields that we're talking about with quite a lot of the bioenergy layer, chakras and things like that, is such fine, weak magnetic fields, and they're not made of particles either. So the next revolution. Go on. Right. Yeah, I think you're talking about the Higgs boson there. Is that right? Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Well, this is going to be part of our research programs, and I think that it is possible to detect it. You just have to look in the right direction. And these very fine forms of energy, magnetic types of magnetic fields that can hold structures, I think that they are detectable, because I think that anything that is made of energy is measurable, because energy is form. So anything in the physical universe of form can be detected. The soul, which is a vehicle, really. So let's not get confused with the true self, awareness. That's completely non-physical, undetectable. But the soul itself, the vehicle, all the energy body, the higher mind, and all that, that's made of energy, and it's made of magnetic energy. So I think it's measurable, it's detectable. It's just we have to look in the right direction, look in the right place to find it. I think that's the main thing. I'm hoping that we have the technology already available. I think that we have the technology already available that exists in the world to detect the energies of the soul. I think it's just not hasn't people aren't looking in the right direction yet. I think. Yeah. I agree. And people take a long time to get used to things. So progression takes time. So the first time something like a theory comes out, or even approved theory, it won't be accepted. But then other people then have to do it, and then very gradually, the more and more research projects and scientific papers come out, the more it starts to become accepted. I mean, look at biological evolution, for example. That theory first came out 100 to 150, 200 years ago or something, and it's still not 100% accepted by everyone on the planet. Well, that's been like a resurgence. That's a strange one. Yeah, 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 yeah. But I reckon that's part. I reckon that's part of the dip that you see before the global awakening. I think that's part of that crashing aspect that we see, that we described earlier in the lesson, where everything looks like it's going wrong, everything looks like it's going downhill, but that's just like a dip just before the main explosion, and then after that, the flowering of awareness. So I reckon that's just a symptom of the global awakening, the rise of conspiracy theories and things like that, and the crisis of truth. Right. Yeah. No. So basically, you've got the magnetic field of the planet, which has got a north and south pole, and the magnetic meridians run north to south around, and those are just normal magnetic fields that you use a compass to navigate with, for example. Um, but the thing is, it's the magnetic field. There's a very strong magnetic field lines, but that acts as an anchor to the subtle energy systems of the planet. So subtle energy is just magnetic fields, all different types. The collective mind is just magnetic fields of different types, with different structures. But it's all anchored around the magnetic field of the planet. So one feature of the collective mind is that it forms links between individuals. Chakra cords is an example of that. Also telepathic links and information pathways, communication pathways. They run through the collective mind, and they actually can run through like magnetic field lines. So information lines can actually run through magnetic meridians. So ley lines is an example of that. Now, ley lines tend to be sort of crisscrossed everywhere in all sorts of different directions. They're not aligned north and south or anything, but they are part of the collective mind, and they are anchored on the general magnetic field lines of the planet. So it's very close, yeah, I would say. But I think ley lines are more additions to the magnetic fields than the meridians are. The magnetic meridians are core. They're part of the core magnetic fields of the planet itself, which are generated by the core of the planet. The molten core of the planet, and the iron and other things in the core of the planet is what's actually generating the magnetic field. But ley lines are a growth of collective mind, which are anchored on those magnetic field lines, and ley lines are big communication pathways between different places in the collective mind. And it's also it's like the highways or the motorways of the collective mind. That's what ley lines are. And spirits that travel around the collective mind use ley lines and other pathways to travel about as well. Yeah, and connections and meeting points and sort of convergence points of ley lines. Yeah. Sorry, say again. Oh, right. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, that's a nice way of putting it. You could say, yeah. But don't forget that dowsing is also a type of intuition as well. So it's you could say it's a type of compass, but it's actually coming from your higher mind. It's higher mind communication. Yeah. And we're going to go over that in the lesson on intuition, that's for sure. And we're going to go over the whole collective mind thing in the lesson on the collective mind. So we've got a little bit of spare time, really, to be honest with you. So is there anything that anyone wants me to go over in terms of revision with out of anything that we've done so far, whether it's to do with Kundalini or self-realization or the layers of the pyramid? Anything that we've done so far that anyone like me to run over, or that anyone has any questions about? Right, yeah. Knowing, okay. Well, there's different ways to talk about it, to be honest. There's different aspects of it, I suppose you could say. And some of this will be covered in the lesson on intuition, but let's go over it and try and relate it to what we've been talking about here as well. So, first of all, I should say that knowing is a type of intuition, and there are certain aspects of intuition that are used by the higher mind. Now, first of all, that there are many types of intuition, and what I'm talking about here is higher mind to lower mind communication. That's the type of intuition I'm talking about here. Because there are other types of intuition that you can get from the lower mind. The lower mind subconscious can also produce feelings of intuition about something. But we're not talking about that for a minute, that's a separate subject. Most of the time when we say intuition, we're talking about higher mind to lower mind communication. But that is actually a journey of intuition as you go through self-realization. Maybe we'll get onto that in a second. But the point I wanted to make here was the types of intuition that the higher mind uses to communicate with the lower mind. And when a soul goes through its journey of spiritual evolution, it will grow these types of intuition. Now, the intuition pathways run through the major chakras. They run from high mind to low mind through the major chakras. So there is a pathway of intuition going through each chakra. Now, in the crown chakra, it's knowing. It's the sensation of knowing. So you can have that all on its own. It is possible to have just a feeling of knowing. It feels a bit weird because there's no information attached to it, but you can have that feeling of just knowing. Through the brow chakra goes information. Now, information can be given in the form of thoughts and language, or visual thoughts, visions and things like that. Now, if you combine information and a sense of knowing, then you've got knowing plus context. And that already is a very good form of guidance. Now, this is why intuition exists, because the higher mind needed to grow pathways into the lower mind to keep the lower mind on track, keep the lower mind on its life plan that the higher mind has created for it. So these are forms of guidance from the higher mind. So knowing through the crown chakra, information through the brow chakra, focus goes through the throat chakra. Being able to focus on things. And when people have a very blocked throat chakra, quite often they become unfocused, in fact, because it's blocked that intuition pathway. Love goes through the heart chakra, not surprisingly. Pleasure goes through the solar plexus chakra. Enthusiasm goes through the sacral chakra. And joy goes through the root chakra. Now, don't worry, we're going to go over this in the intuition lesson. But basically, there are 7 pathways of intuition from higher mind to lower mind. And through those 7 pathways, the higher mind can direct the lower mind in any endeavor, in any direction. If you've got all of those characteristics, the higher mind can actually push the lower mind into whatever direction it wants to. And that's how it guides the lower mind through its life plan. So let's go back to the sensation of knowing. Now, different people are at different stages of development, and those pathways have to grow over spiritual evolution. So you could say that people's level of intuition are in various different degrees of development, you could say. Now, somebody who's ready for Kundalini awakening in their particular incarnation will have fully developed intuition pathways. But as you go through self-realization, intuition changes. So your sense of knowing actually changes. It actually increases and increases. And you go through a journey. You go through a journey because intuition changes through this journey because higher mind and lower mind actually start coming together as a hybrid, as one. And in the end, there is no more communication between higher mind and lower mind. It just starts coming from the ninth chakra, the Akashic stream. All your guidance and information starts just coming from the Akashic stream, and it gets fed into your awareness filter, your awareness. We'll talk about the filter later on. So as you go through this journey of intuition, of the higher mind and lower mind coming together, and information just starting to come down from the ninth chakra, it starts to expand as well. The Akashic stream starts to expand, and the level of Akashic information that you download starts to get more and more and more. Now, as a soul progresses through spiritual evolution, they will, when they start building their Kundalini system, they will start to download Akashic information. The higher mind starts to download Akashic information, and that is like a guidance from the source, you could say, or it's more like downloading the infinite plan of the source, or the infinite deterministic plan of the source. This is how higher minds can know the future, because they're downloading this information from the ninth chakra. And then sometimes they dish it out to the lower mind, and quite often they don't. But this is where the idea of the Akashic records comes from, where people say they go astral traveling, or they go to a place where they find a storehouse of information. Quite often it happens in astral traveling, because you can actually go to what looks like a library and go and look for information. It's just a dream construct, but this is what people call the Akashic records, a storehouse of information. But it's not the lower mind that is getting that information in those cases. There's a bit of a misunderstanding there, because the lower mind will say, oh yeah, I can do this, I can do that, I can go to the Akashic records, I can know the future. And really the ego just grows then. But what's actually happening is that the higher mind downloads it and then decides whether it wants to feed it to the lower mind. That's what's really happening there. Anyway, through the journey of spiritual evolution, the higher mind can download more and more of this Akashic information. But when you go through self-realization, it starts to open up even further, basically, and starts to come without limits. But as we are all aware, you only get what you need. It's not like you suddenly get access to everything. You only get what you need. It's not what you want, it's what you need. So you download and you understand and know everything that you need to carry out your job. Everything you need to fulfill your role, fulfill your purpose, whatever that higher purpose will become as you become self-realized. Yeah, well, I would take this back to the universal law of healing, I would say, and say that suffering is created by the universe because of separation. Suffering is created by the universe because of its own ignorance to its unity. So the universe creates the physical world of form by creating a duality, positive and negative energy at its most basic. And then the universe is born. And of course, the universe needs duality to create all these different forms. But the source loses its unity. It loses its self-awareness in that separation, which inevitably leads to suffering. Through the journey of life, there is a duality which is created in all sorts of different forms, and in humans, it gets manifested as positive and negative emotions, for example. Yeah, well, I guess here you're touching on the concept of lesson learning, really, and how suffering is a massive part of spiritual evolution. And it has to be a part of spiritual evolution. You learn a lot through suffering, don't you? You grow through suffering, and it can definitely increase your spiritual evolution and lesson learning, and people coming together as a community. Suffering will bind them together in that way. So I think that's what it's saying, isn't it? That it can act as a social cohesion, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, no, no, no. I mean, there is some grains of truth under there, isn't there? Because it is through suffering that we learn our lessons the quickest, and it is through suffering that we get to awakening quicker. So yeah, I mean, that's why suffering is there in the universe, is for the universe to awaken from its suffering. So I guess you could say that the more suffering there is, the quicker you get there, I suppose. Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's always there's always some abusers of it, of whatever. Yeah, yeah. But the suffering we're talking about here, I think, is more on a higher mind lesson learning basis. So the higher mind learns its lessons through the lower mind. That's how the human system works. So the lower mind is what causes all the suffering, but the higher mind is learning lessons and building the Kundalini system as it goes. So it's that's actually getting the person towards awakening quicker. It's that building of the Kundalini system, which is all about emotional lesson learning. And you can't go through emotional lesson learning, without going through some rough time. But yeah, whacking oneself with the Bible or chains or or thumb screws, it's not going to help us. Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I tell you what. The first thing is the why question. Now you can explain how, and then you can explain how, and then how, and how, and how. But you can never answer the why question. It's one of those questions which actually is a non-question, because you can ask why to infinity. You can say, well, why does suffering exist? Well, it's to awaken from our suffering. But why does it have to happen like that? And you can go into infinite detail, but there's always a why question on the end of it. So it is a never-ending question that you can't answer. It's one of those questions that belong in mind, that can't understand the concept of just is. And it's totally normal, it's totally normal for us to be constantly asking that question. But I think there is no answer to that question. It's not an answerable question, the why. It's just is. When you get down to it, that's how existence works. And you can't, if you think about this is another mind bending question, thought as well. You can't. There isn't any alternative, because this is the only existence. It's not like this is how our universe works, and outside it maybe there's another way of doing it. This is the only existence which exists. So there are no other alternatives, if you know what I mean. It's not really an answer though, but sorry, can I just let me go back to your second part of the question, and that was the idea of little pieces of awareness, then getting back to the original awareness. If you think about it, it's not that there is a universal awareness where everything is wonderful. I think you mentioned, I don't think there is a universal awareness which is always complete. I think there's lots of different types of awareness, and there is always awareness in existence. But self-awareness, knowing the universe, knowing itself, has to grow. That's why it creates the universe of form. It's to know itself. So that self-awareness, i.e. self-realization, the universe knowing itself, actually has to grow in the journey of life. So that's the only way it can actually know itself. So yeah. Yeah, so it's not like everything. Why don't we just stay in a state? Why doesn't the universe just stay in a state of wonderful universal awareness? Well, it can't because it's not a state of wonderful universal awareness because it doesn't know itself. It has to generate the physical world to actually start to know itself and understand itself. That's what the physical world is all about. So it's and you said it in the end. It's just that's the way it is, but that's the way it does it. It's through the journey of life, and it has to create that separation. It has to lose its awareness, self-awareness. It has to lose its knowledge, and but it's only in conscious beings that it gains that self-awareness. So there is no, I don't think there is no any universal awareness which is self-realized. It happens through people. That's how the universe knows itself, not in any other location or any other sort of place. Which is why self-realization and well, life and the journey of life and individual beings and their self-realization is so precious because that is the whole point of the universe itself. It's that universe becoming aware of itself in its own universe, if you like. Yeah, the whole world's going on about this actually as well, and it's all over social media as well, and it's a great subject. And yes, this is all about the lead up to the global awakening, and this is along the same sort of thing as signs, spiritual signs that people just see everywhere. And these spiritual signs or these synchronicities that happen, these are all part of the infinite plan, the infinite deterministic plan. These are all part of the acacia, which is flowing and manifesting the physical universe. So if you think about it in terms of that movie screen and the acacia flow which manifests it, it's all written already in that acacia which is flowing. And all those synchronicities which is interconnected, all interwoven, interconnected things, they are all written in the acacia and they manifest, and then you experience them as synchronicities. And yeah, I think it's all ramping up because we're getting closer and closer to that point of the global awakening, which I think every planet goes through. Every planet goes through these cycles. So it's a very important time in history, I think. And the idea of spiritual signs is also similar. When people see certain signs and they attach a certain relevance to it, and it means something to them. This is also part of acacia as well, and it's the same with synchronicities. Imagine when acacia is formed. It's non-physical, so it's nowhere. But just try and visualize this stream of acacia, which is growing and growing and growing, and then suddenly it materializes. But when it's formed infinitely, because there's no start to it, it's each part, each bit is formed with a future purpose. Now, in the future, there is going to be a mind which recognizes it, and assigns meaning to it. This is another feature of acacia. It's actually made of meaning. It's actually we call it metaphors or metaphorical geometry. We call it that acacia is actually made of metaphors, and metaphors is meaning, isn't it? Assigning meaning to something. So when acacia is actually generated, it's created with a future meaning, which at some point a mind, which is somewhere in the universe, is going to recognize that sign and assign meaning to it. And that's the same with synchronicities as well. When acacia is being generated, all these synchronicities are inbuilt to it, and they are designed to at some point come to fruition when they're being manifested. But it's all to do with mind. It's all to do with the evolution of mind. That's why the universe always evolves mind as part of the journey of life, because mind is designed to find meaning in those bits of akashic information. Yeah, 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 yeah. Definitely. Have you seen on TikTok recently? There's been something called rapture talk. I don't know if you've heard of that. and everyone I think it came from a South African priest or pastor or something who said he had a vision of Jesus come to him and told him the rapture was going to happen on the 25th of September, I think, and it basically went viral and went around TikTok and everyone. The rapture, by the way, is the end of the world where God will remove or take the faithful up to heaven, basically, and so people think they literally think that they will be transported up to heaven. So loads of people were selling their cars, selling their houses, and things like that, and they thought that they were waiting for that day, and they thought that they were literally going to float up to heaven, basically, and everyone else on the planet sort of dies in the end of the world, basically. And yeah, it's crazy how these things go around, and then when it didn't happen, there was loads of people posting apologizing basically and saying, "I'm really sorry, it didn't happen. I really thought it was going to happen. I'm really sorry. Sorry you sold your house and your car." Yeah. Yeah, there's the whole alien thing gets mixed in with spirituality so easily these days. It's all sort of getting mixed together, isn't it? And there's all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah. I would say that it's staggered though. So all planets do go through it, but it's at different stages of development. A little bit like a human soul group, let's say. And say the human soul group of humanity itself, all the people on the world you could consider one soul group, all different stages of development of souls, and animals as well. But then you got individual soul groups or soul families with humans, and you've got different stages of evolution or development even within a soul family. Well, it's the same with planets as well. You get planetary soul groups, and everyone's on different stages of development, but it's all connected in the universal plan. It's all connected through those akashic cycles. So global awakenings will happen in periodically, but in a sort of staggered way, a little bit like self-realization does on our planet. Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about it, and I don't think aliens are not going to be the ones to save the planet. It's humans that have to save the planet, and it's humans that have to go through self-realization and awakening to fix our own problems. And I think that is just the way of the universe. But I think there is communication with other planets, and there is beings who are there to help. But it's not an interference way, and it's not this huge alien arrival that's going to happen. I think that's a complete and utter misunderstanding. I don't think that's going to happen at all. Eventually in our future in the planet, there will be open contact, but that's going to be so far in the future because the world's not ready for that. But I also don't think they're here in material form either. I don't think there's spaceships flying around. I don't think that it works like that at all. They're in the astral dimensions. That's where the communication happens, and that's where all communication happens with other planets. I don't think that space travel in between planets like that is a thing at all in the universe, just because of the restrictions of light speed and things like that. I think it's a misunderstanding, and it's already happening there inside you. There's just no need to think about it in terms of physical, material spaceships and things like that. I think it's a misunderstanding or a science fiction, an obsession with science fiction. Yeah, this is something that really should be discouraged from people doing it. I think it's a bit of a problem. I think that it exists now because originally Kundalini or the knowledge of Kundalini was kind of hidden. It was like a hidden knowledge, and it really was sort of limited to, let's say, yogic practices, let's say, or yogic practices within certain Eastern philosophies. But it was always a very hidden thing because it was always just taught from master to disciple in the yogic traditions. And and there was a reason for that. There's a reason why it was not taught widely, because the reason is that people are often not ready for it, because it's a very powerful energy, the Kundalini energy. And if you awaken it too soon, then you can have massive problems. And when people are not ready for it to be awakened, it causes all sorts of problems. But now, these days, with globalization and the internet and everything, and people writing certain books about it, the knowledge is out basically, so it's everywhere now. And so, Kundalini yoga became a thing, which it wasn't really a thing before. Now it's a thing, and people are teaching it, and people are teaching it. And the point of Kundalini yoga is to awaken the Kundalini. And really, that, in my opinion, that shouldn't happen at all. There shouldn't be Kundalini yoga. I don't think that that really should exist, to be honest with you, because when it's ready to awaken, it will awaken naturally. There's no need to go and try and awaken it yourself or get somebody else to try and awaken it. So basically, these practices that you just described there are a Kundalini yoga practitioner, let's say, will have a client, they'll get them to come and lie down. They might do all sorts of strange energy practices on them. They might get them to do very, very powerful breathing techniques like things like breath of fire and other contortion breathing techniques that contort the lower abdomen, and all sorts of strange manipulations and contortions in the lower spine to try and awaken the Kundalini, and often chanting and all sorts of other visualizations are common as well, or listening to certain sound frequencies. Altogether, those type of things can have a massive impact on the Kundalini system. Now, what the problem is, what can happen is that, imagine the Kundalini system is a set of pipes, a load of pipe work that is being grown. Think of it like a house, when you're building a house and you're putting loads of water pipes together, basically, and you're gluing them all together and you're building the whole water system. Think of it a bit like that, because it really is comes down to anatomy. Now, the Kundalini system, if it's only half grown, if the house is only half built, let's say, and somebody switches the water mains on, and water goes through all those pipes, and then what's going to happen? It's going to be all sorts of trouble. There's going to be burst pipes, connections are going to burst, there's going to be water everywhere, there's going to be damage going on. That's exactly what happens with the Kundalini system when it's activated too early. If it's only half grown, for example, it's going to cause what we call a Kundalini rupture. Now, a Kundalini rupture is when the Kundalini has been activated, the K1 energy, which is at the base of the spine. That goes up and then it hits the half-grown Kundalini system and just explodes inside, and that's a rupture. And if you think about what the Kundalini system is and what it's for, it's emotional intelligence. It's a system of emotional intelligence in humans. So, and it is very connected into the nervous system. So there's two sides of what happens. There's two sides of what can happen. One side is emotional turmoil, and that's when people's life just suddenly falls apart, when they've gone to get their Kundalini awakened, they weren't ready for it, suddenly their life just completely falls apart. They're in complete emotional turmoil, quite often in states of psychosis as well, paranoia, huge paranoia. And then the other side of it is neurological as well, because it's linked into the nervous system. You get all sorts of Kundalini symptoms which are massively exaggerated. We talk about Kundalini symptoms. Whenever you get a Kundalini symptom, you can get some of these symptoms. Sorry, whenever you get a Kundalini awakening, you can get some of these neurological type symptoms. Well, if you've had a Kundalini rupture, those symptoms are just going to be massive. There's going to be all sorts of problems going wrong in the material body. And I've heard of people being completely incapacitated, not being able to move anymore, paralyzed. I've heard of people committing suicide because of the emotional side of things. And it can take a long time to heal. It can take 10 years to heal. It can take more time than that sometimes. And so is she, sorry, are you talking about the practitioner, or somebody who's gone to see the right? Oh dear. Well, yeah, I mean, you can only hope that it's only slightly damaged. or something. But that makes sense that something's been picked up in the material body and the immune system. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? But you can also you can it takes a long time to heal, but you can heal it manually as well through energy healing. So, so if she does have a lot of problems that start appearing because of it, you can actually help her because you can with energy healing you can put it back in the box. You know, you've opened the box and it's gone everywhere. You can actually push it back in a box and you can heal the Kundalini system. So it is possible to help somebody, I think. But yeah, it's a big thing. It's a big thing, and you know, I spend a fair bit of time on TikTok posting videos and stuff, and there's a lot of Kundalini stuff going on TikTok, and I'm getting a lot of people contacting me who are in trouble with their Kundalini system. Well, especially with the Kundalini thing. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I haven't even discussed that. That makes it even worse, doesn't it? The amount of damage that they could be causing, and they're charging for it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the only positive I can possibly extract from it is that I think that it is part of the plan. So it is part of the infinite plan. So we have to accept it's happening, and it is also part of the global awakening. I think because it's another one of these things which is actually highlighting the whole Kundalini thing. Now, Kundalini is so important for the global awakening because it is the mechanism by which we become self-realized. It's the physiological side of self-realization. And what we're seeing with this Kundalini craze, and it is a bit of a craze, it's not good, but it's raising awareness for Kundalini, which is a good thing. And maybe that's part of this whole build up towards the global awakening because Kundalini is such a big part of it, or will be. All right, well, should we call it a day? Lovely. It was cracking discussion. Thanks, everyone.